If I run out of gas in my car, there's no denying it. Right? The car just won't move. And the gas gauge says E and the light's on and it's at zero and it literally won't start. If I'm at E on my bank account, there's no denying it. They gave me a statement. It says zero. I've got nothing in there. I can't spend any money. Or even maybe I'm in the negative, right? I've got debt. When it comes to emotional or mental health, it's not that clear. I don't have a gas gauge. I don't get a bank statement on my mind.
Right.
I just have these feelings I'm trying to figure out, and I don't know if it's normal or if it's not normal. I don't know what's the best course of action. Do I just sort of stay in the fight, or do I need to pull myself out of the fight?
Mm.
So I think with all of that, to try to fight for clarity means it's not as simple as a spreadsheet. It's going to take some conversation. It's going to take getting some help.
Right.
Having somebody who knows more than I do or sees patterns, like does this for a living, or again has more wisdom or understanding in this area, for me to open up, to be honest about where I am, and to then come up with how do I work myself to a healthier place.
Study out there, people that study and do spiritual practice of any kind at least have a 40% thicker prefrontal cortex. It's obviously proven by science and by life has experience there. I want to ask about this aspect. As you go through this, you guys have had the Hope Fund. You guys have obviously a massive, push towards mental health. What placed on your heart to really go out after that industry, kind of that avenue of life?
Yeah, well, I think it's really good that this has become um, a conversation that people are having a lot. Right, for a long time, I think that that was difficult to have, because it made people feel weak, or they maybe were worried about a stigma. Someone's going to think I'm crazy, or they're going to think I'm sick, or whatever it might be. So I think for a long time, it drove people into isolation and feeling like they had to hide. So I think the fact that it's a more common conversation is really good. You think about the great commandment, Luke 10:27, is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with
Mhm.
all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength, right? So you think that's your body, it's your spirit, it's your relationships. So love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
It's your emotion, but it's also your mind, right? Your mental health. So I think it's extremely important. Um, I'm not like a licensed counselor, or
Right.
that's not where my formal education lies. I find myself very curious about brain science. I find myself very curious about psychology, and even counseling. I listen to a lot of stuff on that, so I'm sort of a amateur enthusiast
Sure.
around that. But I think it takes a lot of courage to be honest about where a person's at, and I also think it's elusive. So think of it like this: if I run out of gas in my car, there's no denying it. Right? The car just won't move. And the gas gauge says E and the light's on and it's at zero and it literally won't start. If I'm at E on my bank account, there's no denying it. They gave me a statement. It says zero. I've got nothing in there. I can't spend any money. Or even maybe I'm in the negative, right? I've got debt. When it comes to emotional or mental health, it's not that clear. I don't have a gas gauge. I don't get a bank statement on my mind.
Right.
I just have these feelings I'm trying to figure out, and I don't know if it's normal or if it's not normal. I don't know what's the best course of action. Do I just sort of stay in the fight, or do I need to pull myself out of the fight?
Mm.
So I think with all of that, to try to fight for clarity means it's not as simple as a spreadsheet. It's going to take some conversation. It's going to take getting some help.
Right.
Having somebody who knows more than I do, or sees patterns, like does this for a living, or again has more wisdom or understanding in this area, for me to open up, to be honest about where I am, and to then come up with how do I work myself to a healthier place. What are the areas I can find healing, and what are the areas where I may have to learn how to deal with this, in some kind of way. And what is seasonal? What is something that's going to be just something that over time will go away, and what are things that won't, that are
Mhm.
lasting. So um, all of that to say, I think it's really important, and I think as a church, it's important to have sort of that holistic leaning. Otherwise, I've seen people do a lot of damage where, in a desire, an attempt to honor God and to point people to God, they just say, well, you just got to pray, pray and you'll be fine. Well, yeah, I mean, I think meditation and fixing your mind on the Lord, and there's all kinds of benefits to that, including mental health,
Right.
but it may not be quite that simple of a solution, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it may be definitely not limiting what God can do, because God could heal something like that, and sometimes He does. But there are other times where God uses other things that may not be this instantaneous altar experience to help somebody to get to a better place. So I think we have to be willing to embrace all of that, right? Whether it's something that happens in a split second, or something that might take years and support, and uh, you know learning things we don't know today so that we can
Right.
learn more. So I have a lot of grace for it. I have a lot of grace for people who and a lot of respect for people who are willing to get in there and fight that fight, be honest about it, and do whatever it takes to help get to a better place.
Now, I'm curious for yourself personally, because obviously you talk about mental health, and that can change depending on each person there for yourself. But I know pastors are placed in a very tough predicament. Obviously, when you're a pastor, everyone's looking towards yourself as that kind of help for yourself. You are that person. It's kind of difficult sometimes to find that. As yourself, you've gone through this journey now, being in ministry for many, many years, and as you continue to go through it, what are your kind of strategies? Because I'm not sure what scale it could be on for yourself, but the ups and downs of life. How as a
Mhm.
pastor, like what is your go-to plan? How do you overcome any form of mental health issues?
Great question. So I've done a bunch of things over the years. So a little bit about my story. So both of my sons have autism, and
Mhm.
I didn't see that coming. My first son, when he was diagnosed, it threw me for a loop. It took us a few years to realize what was going on, but I was trying like crazy to bond with him. Was having a hard time doing that.
Mhm.
Um, and my wife and I had a little tension in our relationship, because I was like, I think something's wrong with him. And she's like, no, I don't think so. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, well, we need to get him screened. And she's like, no, I don't think you know what's going on. So we were kind of butting heads a little bit. And
Sure.
then eventually he started getting worse. And so it was one of those things. I didn't know much at all about autism. And now something's happening to your son that you can't control. Like I can't protect them from it or provide them a solution. So I was overwhelmed, and it was in the middle of, the church is growing like crazy. I have all these responsibilities. So I felt like, by the way, and then our second son was born, and he also has autism. So in that season, I've got this growing church. I've got this three kids. I've got a neurotypical daughter who I'm trying to, parent uniquely. And then I've got these two boys, and I'm trying to define reality and then be a healthy dude in the process, and have something to say on Sunday and show up for our staff and be able to be there for our church. It was just, I felt like had the weight of the world on me. So in the process, I did a bunch of things. One was I've met with professional counselors, just to be able to work through stuff, talk through stuff, get some things out. So I encourage people to do that. That was a good experience for me. I also surrounded myself with some veteran guys, like some older guys.
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with peers. Peers are great, and that has a place. But frankly, like, a lot of this was in my late 30s when it started, and all my peers were guys who were in the same season of life I was. They were overwhelmed. They had their own challenges, and so when I'm calling them like, "Dude, I'm overwhelmed," they're like, "Yeah, me too." So I'm so I started meeting with 60, 70-year-old guys, who had been there and done that, and were in a little different season of life, and gleaning from their wisdom and learning from their temperament, and just finding a lot of safety and security in that. And then my wife and I determined that our challenges were not going to destroy our relationship. We committed, let's, no matter how frustrated we get with each other, no matter how tough of a day we have, we're going to keep coming back to each other. So she's been a real haven for me, and I've tried to be the same for her. And of course, we've had our moments of tension and all of that, because stuff is hard and it is emotional at times, and you're not your best self all the time. So we've had that, but for the most part, I mean, we've been it. Well, for sure, this whole thing is it's been an agent of bringing us together, and that was because we chose that. I 100% can see how those sorts of challenges can drive a wedge, and at times cause people to say and do things that do irreparable damage. So you have to make that choice and keep committing to it. So in the middle of all that, frankly, it was hard sometimes to know what was just a hard season and what was a mental health. Is this coming from something chemical? Is this just is this internally driven, or is this just based on environment and everything I have going on that's just hard? I didn't always know the answer to that. Depression runs in my family, so I have on both sides of my family. There's that.
Mhm.
So I'm aware that there may be something connected to me in that way, and you don't necessarily always have certainty on the answer. I think the the key is doing the best you can to keep moving ahead, to keep moving forward, not sweeping things under the rug or being in denial, but to go, what do I need in this season? How do I, again, look forward? What's the next right thing I need to do? And what support do I need? And ask for help where you need help, and then do what's your part of it to do. Because there are some things, Zach, only you can do,
Right.
right? No matter how much I loved or supported you, or no matter how wise of advice I gave you, there are some things that when it comes to Zach's life, only Zach can do. So
Mhm.
when it came to that for me, I can lean on OG pastors and veteran wise people, and sometimes my wife, and sometimes a professional counselor. But then there are some things I just have to
Mm.
buck up and go and do what you got. Put one foot in front of the other by faith, and win the day, or win the minute.
If this conversation blessed you today, please hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps YouTube push this message to more people who need to hear it. If you're listening on audio, a 5-star review is a huge help. Share this episode with a friend or family member who needs encouragement, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.